So, dear Robert, can you introduce yourself for our audience? What is your background and what you are doing today into the research fields?
Yes, I would describe myself as an enthusiastic fascia researcher on a scientific level. Prior to becoming a dedicated fascia researcher working at several universities, I was a psychologist before, and then for 20 years I worked as a manual therapist, mostly with the Rolfing method, but also with the Feldenkrais method. But now, since almost 20 years, I'm doing laboratory and clinical work related to understanding fascia.
Great. So your main point today is to searching and having really a scientific way of analyzing fascia, but also manual therapy with that field.
Yes, yeah. So it's both. I want to understand how the fibroblasts, they are mainly the active architects, and the other properties of fascia are created by the active architects, how they respond to mechanical stimulation, but also to chemical stimulation. For example, if you are in chronic stress and there is an increased acidity or pro-inflammatory milieu, then it's not a mechanical stimulation, but a chemical stimulation. So I want to understand how they function. But then, as an equal interest, I want to understand how we can use manual therapy to change them in a positive direction.
Great. Can you tell us right now what is the content of the web conference will be the 11th of November?
This will be a highlight for me because it gives me an opportunity to reflect what has been new and unexpected in the international field of fascia research on an academic level that could be of interest to people who have their prime interest with their patients and not by reading scientific literature. So it gives me an opportunity to reflect what has been new and relevant in the fascia research field in the last 5 years for manual therapists.
So great. And in that perspective, can you give us some example of practical application of this knowledge, of this news and this update of the research? In fact, what you will be presenting in these conferences.
Yes, I will not give you all, because ultimately in this lecture, I will have 6 or 7 or 8 different practical applications that you can take home, but I can give you a glimpse of 2 of them. One is the new discovery of strong pressure interoceptive touch. So rather than gentle touch, they found out in the recent years that strong mechanical pressure that is slow but still comfortable talks and elicits the same insular cortical regions that you get by a caressing touch. By somebody who strokes you in a gentle way. So I will discuss the differences between gentle touch and a strong, comfortable interoceptive touch. And that then gives manual therapists a very good recommendations. When is it good to do a gentle touch? And when, under what circumstances, can I add a stronger manual touch? So that would be one. The other one is new insights how the connective tissue that is involved in making you stiff is different in young people than in old people. For example, in old people, it's more the perimuseum, which is the connective tissue inside of a muscle that's in a vertical direction. And if you have an older person around 60 years, you should look for stiffening in the perimuseum, in the septi. If you have a younger adult of 20 years, you should work on the epimuseum in order to loosen restrictions. That is not inside of the muscle, it goes around the muscle in horizontal direction. So I think these are very useful takeaways that we didn't know 10 years ago. As a manual therapist, you cannot be unbiased. You should be biased. You should be on the side of improvement for your client. You should not be a neutral scientist. So it also means if you expect that your client is getting better, your preparatory assessment is biased. You see how nice they smile at you and how their walk has improved. So if you then assess, your finger is biased. So we need, in additional to subjective assessment tools, that we still need to learn how to foster them, how to become more sensitive in our touch, in our intuition, in our hearing, etc. We need objective tools. And there we have several tools. We have the Myoton, we have the Indento Pro, we have ultrasound now, where we can do objective measurements on the regional tissue quality. With chronic low back pain, in at least 70%, the tissue doesn't matter. It's all up here. That is my clinical experience, and also having seen a lot of the literature and the experiments. If I have toothache, I don't want my dentist to say, Robert, it's all in your brain. I don't need to look at your tooth infection. So it depends on where the pain is coming from and whether it's acute or chronic. So I would be more specific. Chronic low back pain that has been there for 3 months, for 6 months. The regional quality is most likely in the background, and the central nervous system is in the foreground. But a fresh tennis elbow, a fresh injury, even plantar fasciitis, Achilles tendinosis, some styles of acute neck pain, I really can palpate and measure regional tissue qualities that I think a good osteopath, a good manual therapist, he should be like a good dentist. He should look for potential infection or mechanical squeezing, not only in your jaw, but also at your tennis elbow or at your neck. This is very dear to me because in the fascia research field that basically started in 2007 in terms of Western school medicine attention, I'm one of the I'm one of the elders in the movement. And I can see how different professions are drawn to us and others are more skeptical. And since fascia is a non-fragmented, it's a very connecting tissue that makes it difficult to cut it into discrete pieces, it attracts more people who don't like precision. They like connectedness. So, for example, Frank Willers, he loves to divide people in a humorously way into splitters and lumpers. And the splitters, they usually have very clean desks, and they love it if they can divide something into 5 categories, and it gives them a sense of competence. And they tend to be more biomechanical scientists, and they become surgeons. And then there are the lumpers who look for the connections, and they become artists, and they become dancers, and they become more intuitive healers. And both of them have their huge advantages in different fields. And so the fascia research has attracted more the lumpers with all their strengths and with their potential weaknesses. That they are not interested in precision. They like to make vague associations. As it is in the sky, it is in the human body. We are all connected. I may be over-exaggerating. So we have more esoteric people there. And they like to be together with the splitters who only believe something if they cut it into pieces under their microscope. And I'm one of them who is taking a lot of my time to keep the camps together, to learn from each other. So I think the lumpers and the splitters, and in fascia research, we haven't done a split yet.
Yeah.
The biomechanical people who are skeptic about anything and they don't like the emotions and the esoteric ones, and those who basically come from their belly feeling, we are learning from each other. And I think that is a good direction, but it's a challenge. So a lot of the martial artists, they have some heroes who had superpower that could not be explained by muscular contraction. And then we showed, yes, fascia can contract very, very slowly in a petri dish. Then they said, Robert, you proved that Bruce Lee's amazing superpower was the fascia that kicked people to the other end of the room. And I said, no, no. If fascia contracts, the speed is 1 centimeter per month. So for a martial artist, you need the superpower from somewhere else. So that's a good example.